I've always been the quiet one, the afterthought. My name's Jeremy, I'm 31, and I grew up in a small town just outside Flagstaff, Arizona. My older brother, Brandon, was the golden boy. Straight A's, varsity sports, class president, you name it. Me? I kept to myself. I liked computers, worked part-time fixing busted routers, and hung out in the background while Brandon soaked up every ounce of praise. My parents, especially my dad, acted like Brandon could walk on water. If he punched a wall, it was because he was passionate. If I got a B in math, it was because I wasn't applying myself. That's how it was all through childhood. I got used to being invisible. After high school, Brandon went to UCLA and eventually started a marketing firm in Phoenix. I went to a local community college and then landed a job as an IT consultant. Not flashy, but steady. I paid my bills, didn't ask for much, and stayed out of trouble. Brandon, meanwhile, turned his little startup into a multi-million-dollar company and became some kind of hometown legend. My parents worshipped the ground he walked on. And for a while, I convinced myself I didn't care. I didn't want the spotlight. Or so I thought. Things changed about 2 years ago, when my dad had a stroke. Suddenly, everyone came back home. Brandon showed up in a Tesla wearing a Rolex, making speeches at the hospital and telling the nurses what to do. I showed up in jeans with a phone charger and a quiet voice. Dad survived, but things got tense. I stayed to help with his rehab. Brandon didn't. He flew back to Phoenix and started texting me instructions like I worked for him. And my mom? She just kept saying, "You should be more like your brother." But the real breaking point came 6 months ago when Dad passed away. That's when the truth, the whole ugly truth, started to unravel. The day after the funeral, Brandon sat us down and said, "Dad left me in charge of the estate. Jeremy, you'll get your share soon, don't worry." I thought it was weird, but I didn't argue. I trusted my brother. Big mistake. A week later, I got a letter from the lawyer. My father had left everything to Brandon. The house, the savings, the life insurance, everything. I called my mom in shock. She said, "Your brother promised to take care of you." That was the moment I realized my family had never seen me as an equal. I was a backup plan, a spare. And Brandon, he wasn't going to take care of me. He was going to erase me. But what he didn't know is that I'd been paying attention, and I knew things he thought I'd forgotten. Like the secret that could destroy everything he built. The one I'd buried for years. Until now.
I wasn't supposed to know. That's what Brandon always counted on, that I'd stay quiet, stay small, stay in my lane. But he underestimated how much I remembered and how much I'd finally had enough. The secret started back when I was 16 and Brandon was 20, home from college for the summer. One night, I woke up to someone yelling outside. I looked through my bedroom window and saw Brandon stumbling out of his car, blood on the bumper, face pale as a ghost. He was shaking, swearing under his breath, dragging something heavy out of the passenger seat. I crept downstairs, heart pounding, and watched from the crack in the back door as he opened the trunk and shoved in a mangled bicycle, bent, broken, covered in blood. Then he hosed the car off in silence, scrubbing it like a man possessed. I wanted to ask what happened, but he saw me. Our eyes locked. He walked right up to me, calm as ever, and said, "You didn't see anything. Understand?" I nodded. I didn't ask questions. The next day, the town was buzzing. A kid named Evan Flores had been hit by a car while biking home from his summer job. The driver never stopped. Evan ended up in a coma. I remember my stomach turning to stone. I wanted to tell someone, anyone, but when I brought it up to my parents, just barely hinting that maybe Brandon knew something, my dad slapped the table and barked, "You shut your mouth! Don't you dare spread lies about your brother!" That was the first time I truly understood what Golden Boy meant. Brandon wasn't just favored, he was untouchable, protected, even at the cost of someone else's life. And so I stayed silent for years, until now. After Dad died and I got nothing in the will, I started digging, quietly, carefully. I found old newspaper clippings, archived traffic reports, and eventually, after weeks of searching, I tracked down Evan Flores' mother. She still lived in town. I told her I was doing a personal project, and she let me in. Her house was like a shrine to Evan. He never woke up. He died 2 years after the accident, never speaking a word again. She showed me a photo of his bicycle. My heart stopped. It was the same one I saw Brandon throw into the trunk. There was a sticker on the frame, a green alien, burned into my memory. It matched. I took a picture when she wasn't looking. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let Brandon walk away from this. Not again. I started building a file. Evidence, timelines, photos, newspaper clippings, even Google Maps screenshots matching Brandon's route to the accident location. I included statements from old friends who remembered Brandon being really weird that summer. But the real bombshell came when I checked Dad's old safe. I remembered the code, our childhood home address. Inside, I found a manila envelope, a police report. Brandon had been stopped the night of the accident for erratic driving, but released after calling our dad. No citation, no charges, just a verbal warning. Dad had covered it up, buried it, protected him. Suddenly it made sense. Why Brandon was the heir, why I was erased, why our family pretended I didn't exist unless they needed a tech issue solved. They were all protecting him, and I was done protecting everyone. The next step? I needed leverage, something big enough to shake him. I copied everything, printed, backed up, encrypted. Then I didn't sleep after Brandon hung up on me. I sat at my kitchen table with 3 laptops open, 2 thumb drives, and a legal pad full of dates, names, license plate numbers, and questions that still didn't have answers, but soon would. By dawn, I'd scheduled an appointment with an attorney in Phoenix who specialized in wrongful death civil claims and post-probate estate disputes. Because even if the original criminal window on the hit and run was complicated or closed, there were still potential civil angles tied to concealment, insurance declarations, and fiduciary misrepresentation if Dad knowingly shielded Brandon while moving assets around. I wasn't bluffing anymore. I needed to know what was real, what was leverage, what was legally actionable, and what was just moral dynamite. When I told the attorney the broad strokes, she didn't dismiss me. She leaned in, asked for documentation, and when I showed her the copy of the old police contact sheet with Dad's signature, she said, "If assets were shifted to avoid potential claims, that matters. Also, if your father named Brandon sole executor under questionable pressure or concealment, we can petition to review the estate." That was the first oxygen I'd had in weeks. Meanwhile, Brandon started damage control. Texts started pouring in, first fake, calm, then sharp. "Mom doesn't need this stress. You're making up stories. I'll wire you cash if you let this go." And finally, "Say one more word about that kid and I will bury you." Threats are leverage too, especially when saved. I screen captured every message and dumped them into the evidence folder. 2 days later, I drove to see Mom because she deserved to hear it from me before she heard it from a reporter or from Brandon's spin. She looked older than I remembered from the funeral, and tired in that way people get when loyalty and truth are pulling in opposite directions. I asked her if she remembered the night Brandon came home with the damaged car. She closed her eyes and said nothing for 30 long seconds. Then she said, "Your father handled it. We did what we had to do. Brandon had a future." And there it was, the family doctrine in one line. Futures were rationed, his protected, mine assumed expendable.
I told her about Evan Flores' mother still keeping his photo wall, about the bicycle, about the matching police stop card. Mom started crying, not loud, just leaking grief she'd been storing for 15 years. "Your father swore it was a deer," she whispered. "He said the boy was hit later by someone else. He said talking would destroy the family." I asked her if Dad changed the will because of the cover-up. She didn't answer, but she didn't deny it either. That afternoon, Brandon showed up at my doorstep unannounced, jaw tight, Rolex flashing like a threat. He didn't sit, he paced. "You have no idea what you're doing," he started, then pivoted to negotiation mode. "Look, I'll cut you in on the estate. Cash, a property share, you drop this." I said no. He tried guilt. "You'll ruin Mom, you'll drag Dad's name through the mud." I said, "Dad made his choice." Brandon stepped closer and hissed, "You can't prove anything." So I slid a folder across the counter. Photos of the crushed bike from the Flores house, the police stop card with date and time matching the hit window, a still frame from an archived traffic cam feed the attorney's investigator had already requested that showed a car same make, same dent pattern, leaving the county road that night. Brandon went pale for half a second. That flicker told me everything. He tried to recompose, but the veneer was cracked. I told him I was filing a motion to reopen probate and a civil inquiry tied to concealment. I also told him I'd already spoken, hypothetically, with a journalist about small-town privilege burying a brown kid's death. His mask fully dropped then. "You think anyone cares?" he snapped. "He was 17. It's over. Nobody's coming after me for that." I said, "Maybe not prison, but reputation, business contracts, investor trust, Mom's church, Dad's legacy, all vulnerable." He laughed, slamming the door so hard a picture fell. That night, Marcus called. First time he'd called just to talk since Dad died. He sounded wrecked. Brandon had looped him in and spun the story as blackmail. I told Marcus everything and then emailed him the evidence.
I thought Brandon had finally hit rock bottom when the article dropped, when his face stopped showing up on local business flyers and his once busy social accounts went quiet for days. But I was wrong. Golden boys don't crash. They pivot. And he was still dangerous because people like him don't give up power. They mutate it. The morning after the article aired, he called me. Not to scream, not to threaten, but calm, almost gentle. "Let's talk, Jeremy. No lawyers, no war. Just us." I said no. He said, "Meet me halfway. One chance to fix this. For Mom." That last part got me, because even after everything, I still cared what it did to her. So I agreed. We met at our childhood park, the same bench where Dad used to sit on Saturdays and read the paper while we played. Brandon looked tired, thinner, and for a second I almost believed it was remorse. He started with a sigh. "You win," he said. "The firm's tanking, the family's divided, and I don't even know who I am anymore." I waited. He kept going. "I can't undo what happened, but I can make it right. For you, for Evan's family. I'll give you half the estate, no strings. You withdraw everything, and we seal it all, quietly." I asked about the written statement, the confession. He stiffened. "I can't admit to something I'd never be charged for. That's suicide. But I'll pay. Evan's family too. Anonymous donation, real money." I could hear the rehearsed lawyer behind his words. I leaned forward. "So you'll pay to stay clean, but not own what you did." He said, "Owning it doesn't fix anything, but paying does." I wanted to scream, but instead I said, "No deal." That's when the mask cracked again. "You're doing this out of spite," he snapped. "Not justice. You think anyone cares after all this time? He's gone, Jeremy. Gone." My voice was quiet but firm. "Yeah, because you left him to die." I stood and walked away. The next week things escalated. Anonymous messages hit my inbox. Fake legal threats, junk filings, attempts to scare me into silence.
His lawyer filed a motion to dismiss my probate challenge based on malicious intent. But I had evidence, more than he knew, and I wasn't backing down. Marcus, surprisingly, backed me publicly. He posted a long message about family loyalty versus truth, saying he'd seen evidence that deeply disturbed him, and that silence wasn't an option anymore. People noticed. Even Mom started calling me again. She didn't take sides, but she asked questions now. Real ones. I told her everything. All of it. The police stop, the bike, the guilt. The night Brandon stood over me and said, "You didn't see anything." She cried, quietly, and then whispered, "I think I always knew." But knowing and admitting are different. That was enough. Meanwhile, the civil lawyer representing the Flores family contacted me through the reporter. Evan's mother wanted to talk. I drove 3 hours to meet her again. This time she didn't smile. She looked tired. Older than her years, but sharp. She said, "Is it true?" And I nodded. Then I opened the file on my laptop and showed her everything. Every photo.
It's strange how quiet revenge feels when it's done right. Not explosive, not cinematic, just final, clean. Like shutting a door that's been open too long, letting all the rot and cold finally stay outside. After the settlements were signed and the documents sealed, Brandon went dark. No more messages, no more calls. His social media disappeared. His firm, once the pride of the State Chamber of Commerce, dissolved within months after 2 major clients quietly walked away, citing trust concerns. No headlines, no scandal, just the slow, silent death of a reputation. I never celebrated out loud. I didn't toast to karma or post vague quotes online. I didn't need to. Watching it all fall apart, piece by carefully protected piece, was enough. And the best part? He had to watch me rebuild while he faded. Because I didn't just take the estate money, I reinvested it in something bigger. See, while Brandon scrambled to plug the holes in his sinking ship, I was building. With the help of my attorney and 2 of Marcus's contacts, I opened a nonprofit legal initiative in Evan Flores's name, the EJF Project, focused on exposing buried hit-and-run cases and holding wealthy families accountable in small towns that thrive on silence. We weren't massive, but we were visible, and we were loud. The story, Evan's story, got picked up by a national podcast, not with names, thanks to the NDA, but enough detail that anyone who'd been paying attention could put the puzzle together. Donations flooded in, and suddenly, I wasn't just a forgotten brother with a grudge. I was a name tied to justice, a name people respected. Brandon? He tried to restart somewhere else, moved to Austin, rebranded, new firm, new website. But the internet doesn't forget, especially not when the archived court filings still live in legal databases. Any potential client who ran a deep enough background check saw the red flags. And the ones who didn't, well, they didn't stay long. His LinkedIn still says strategic consultant, but I know for a fact he's working freelance, billing under LLCs he doesn't even own directly. Shells, masks, the same thing he always wore. Only now everyone sees through it. Mom moved in with Marcus last year. She still calls me every Sunday. Our relationship is better, not perfect, but honest, which is more than I ever thought we'd have. She said once, "I wish we'd listened to you sooner." I didn't answer, because there's no point in digging up more guilt. She carries enough. We both do. And as for Marcus, he and I talk like brothers now. Not just shared blood, but shared truth. He was the one who showed up the day we unveiled the first memorial plaque at Evan's old school. He stood with me, in public, and said, "We failed him once, not again." I never told him how much that meant. I didn't need to. And as for Brandon, the last time I saw him was from a distance.
I was leaving a courthouse in Tempe after consulting with a victim's family, and he was in the parking lot, pacing, phone to his ear, clearly stressed. He didn't see me, but I saw him. No suit, no entourage, just a man unraveling under the weight of everything he thought he buried. I stood there for a moment. I could have walked up, said something clever, cold. I could have reminded him that I was the brother he tried to erase, and now I was the one people trusted, the one building something real. But I didn't. I just watched. Quiet. Like you watch the last embers of a fire that used to terrify you, but now can't even warm a room. Because that's the real end of the story, isn't it? Not when he broke me, not when I fought back, but now,